So I think even if you hated or loved the sequel trilogy that Disney put out, you probably loved The Mandalorian regardless of what you thought of that trilogy. And for many, The Mandalorian is the best thing that Disney has done with Star Wars. And I'm right there with most of you on that. Although of course I'm a Solo fanboy, so that's right there with it. But yeah, let's talk about how they decided to approach this series and sort of get away from Boba Fett as far as possible. So we know we have to thank Dave Filoni for what he's done along with Jon Favreau for The Mandalorian. Now obviously The Mandalorian came as sort of a weird transitional period for what they were trying to do with Star Wars, considering at one point there was going to be a Boba Fett film and that was the direction. But when that ended up falling apart due to the director Josh Trank and his comments and what happened with the Fantastic Four 2015 movie, that wasn't going to happen anymore, so they started looking at different outlets and different possibilities. Now when Rogue One came out, Boba Fett was still on the table, but then Solo happened and that didn't make as much, so they started to reevaluate how they were going to approach Star Wars, and we know that they looked at The Mandalorians. In recent interviews with the likes of Deadline, and pretty much anywhere you look at Filoni or Favreau talking about it, they talked a little bit about how The Mandalorian was something that they wanted to explore whether they focused on Boba Fett or not, and it was that culture, and they specifically sat down and wanted to explore the past and the future and sort of get inside of the head and who these people are and what they do and why they do what they do. And they figure that if you look at the likes of Westerns, like for example Sergio Leone films, which I'm a huge fan of, there is that connection there with Boba Fett and obviously The Mandalorian, but they had to take it another step further and form their own identity outside of Fett. And since Boba Fett isn't really a Mandalorian, they decided, okay, we're going to focus on a completely new character and take Boba Fett and do something else with him somewhere down the road. And they decided to go, to the Lucasfilm creative group that's run by Kathleen Kennedy and sit down and talk to everybody and figure out if they could do it. And they were automatically given the go-ahead because their pitch was so different that it didn't really matter. And realistically, I think, it was probably for the best. Now, I'm not saying I wouldn't have enjoyed a Boba Fett TV series, but if you really look at The Mandalorian, it is completely different than what a Fett series would have been, and I think that's why it works in such a unique way and how it fits into Star Wars. It's just something that we weren't expecting, and I think that's why a lot of people really love the series.